Welcome to the Ave Podcast with Cal C on South Shore Ave Radio.
Welcome to the Ave Podcast. So this is going to be a little short. It's probably one of my first short mini pods, probably since the last episode of The Stoops that I used to do a few years ago. And that will be coming back soon, by the way. More details will come on that one later. But so this one's going to be a short mini pod this week, just because it's interesting because, my idea of doing this podcast was I wanted to break down the playoffs so far and just, especially from the teams that lost and everything else. And I'm going to probably save that probably in between the conference finals and the NBA finals, just to break down the playoffs overall at that point in time. I'll probably do a more detailed one for that. But the reason why I scrapped that idea is because, you're seeing... You're seeing a lot of money being thrown at right now in the league, and it kind of made me want to, I kind of had to pivot positions, I would say, a little bit. So, if you're me right now, you're enjoying the NBA playoffs so far. The first round to me was probably better than the second round, but more than anything, I really love the new energy right now that's arrived at everybody's front door, whether you like it or not. And the matchups in the conference finals are a huge example of this, right? Between Indiana and Boston and Dallas and Minnesota. I mean, who would have called that shit, especially Dallas and Minnesota at the start of the season, right? And, I think the biggest surprise of the playoffs so far, although this is not that huge of a surprise if you've been watching these games intently the last couple of years, is Minnesota knocking Denver out of the playoffs. But again, it's not a shock if you not only watch the matchups between them this year, but even also last year, because they met up in the first round, and even though Denver beat them in 5, they probably played Denver the toughest during Denver's run to the chip, and I think it's interesting because you're looking at the landscape of, teams kind of building their team around, their what the champions are doing or what their potential biggest rivals are doing. And Minnesota's probably the one team that had the quote unquote kryptonite, if you will, for the Joker. Even though I don't know if it was necessarily kryptonite, but they had the size to kind of deal with the Joker. And, we'll get to that, like I said, again, in terms of what Denver's going to do a little bit later. But, right now, I mean, Denver's in a position where they're probably going to have to get a little bit of a deeper bench and probably have another usable big guy, if not developing from within. But they're probably going to have to get another big guy or two just to offset what Minnesota just did to them. So it's interesting to see. But let me say this. With that said, I watched that Game 7 and mostly the second half. I was actually playing ball that evening, and we're all in the parking lot hanging out, and I had the game on my phone actually, and we're watching and we're seeing it's a blowout, and then we just keep seeing the score going down while we're talking, and the score's going down, and then we realize we're like, yo, it's the end of the third quarter, and it's a 1-point game, and we all just disperse like cockroaches when the light comes on. Seriously, it was one of those things where it was like, okay, we got to get home and just watch this on a big screen and not my Samsung S22, and we really got to sit back and watch this game, and because now it's really gotten interesting. And listen, man, even though I really like Denver and I'm a huge fan of Jamal Murray, and I love everything the Joker represents and how they play, especially from the unselfishness, from the greatness of Joker, and it's awesome to watch them play. Watching the T-Wolves take them down in the second half was actually incredible. There was a point in time, especially when Naz Reid got that putback slam on Joker, and then they stole the ball at half court, and Ant-Man got that 3 to basically more or less close the game out. I think they had a 10-point lead with a little over 2 minutes to go. And I literally watched the rest of that game with my mouth open. I couldn't believe what I was actually watching. It was incredible. Like, it was honestly incredible. And, and I think more than anything else, what I truly loved about that victory is that I love what it truly represented. And to me, it represented a new energy that I think is really needed in this league right now. Like, one of the things that the NBA desperately needs right now, is they need a revived sense of some of these new players coming in the league and actually taking that mantle and that superstar mantle and that limelight from the guys before them. This really needed in this league. One of the things that's happening with how the game is covered now is that we have to focus on the same team and the same stars and, like LeBron James and the Lakers based on the market and demand. And I get it, right? I totally get it. But we're seeing as much coverage about the Lakers and what the Lakers are going to do and we're seeing all of this stuff happen. And it's like the Lakers aren't even in the playoffs. They're not even in the playoffs right now, and yet they're getting as much or more coverage on some of these shows than the teams that are actually still in it, that are actually fighting for the chip. And I get it because, again, I know how the sports media works. It's all about demand. The bigger markets is going to demand more of the attention. Doesn't matter if you're tired of it or not. It's kind of like, the Lakers of L.A., when a big team, it makes it in New York in one of the bigger markets, or like the Cowboys or the NFL, and how certain shows are just Cowboy centric during the season. Even in Toronto, when the Maple Leafs are doing their thing, and it's you listen to every sports show and most of the coverage is on the Maple Leafs. I get it. I get that. But it kind of hurts the game somewhat when you have such young stars in the game that are so good. And some of them are ready to carry the league right now. And you just they don't get pushed the same way, in some sense. And now I think what's happening is that energy is forced its way to the front door. Like, there's nothing you can do about it. And, it's funny because, watching the first round of the playoffs, which, again, I really enjoyed. I was going into the playoffs, I was so excited to watch it. And it didn't disappoint for the most part, right? But I think what I loved about it the most was, I would say, the chaos of it. Because think about it, like, I think there was a stat out there that said it's the first time since 2005 that LeBron James, KD, and Steph Curry didn't make it out of the first round. And I thought that was beautiful. Like, I was, and listen, I'm a middle-aged guy at this point in my life, and you would think I want to hang on to what we've been seeing the last few years, but I'm like, in one of my chat groups, I'm like, yo, get all these old guys out of here, man. Like, it's time for these guys to shine now. Like, I loved it. I think it's great. It's actually great for the game because what's going to happen when these guys don't make it out of the first round? As you can see, we'll be fine. Even though the ratings are down right now from 4.2 to 3.8, in comparison to last year's playoffs at this point. I think it's down about 11% so far because the casuals fans are basically not getting, Steph Curry and LeBron coverage. Again, I get it, but I think a small part of that is that the casuals don't quite know these guys like some of the legends in the game. And, of course, there's reasons for it, of course, because some of these younger guys haven't been through a deep playoff run. We think of all the streaming and the cord cutting and all the options that are in our lives right now. It kind of makes it tougher to get a hold of the attention span of our viewers. And I would say younger viewers, but we're all guilty of that now. And with that said, it's a great time. And I mean, it's a great time for these younger players to blossom and take over the league. And when I say it's a great time, it's the understatement of a lifetime. You see these TV contracts, right? What the NBA is about to sign with some of these media outlets? Like, the deal and just to explain for those who don't know, the TV deal is up this summer, actually. And the deal's looking like it's going to be finalized between Disney, NBC, and Amazon. And it's looking like it's expected to bring in about $7 billion annually. Which unfortunately will inside the NBA will suffer at the host of this, which I think for some strange reason, I think some network or something's going to happen with them where they're going to be grandfathered in, literally, because even though the show hasn't been maybe not quite the same as it's been in the last, say 10 years or what have you, it's still by far the best in-studio sports show that we have in North America. It's not even close. And I mean that with all the sports. It's not even close. So to lose that, with nothing to replace it, it's going to be, I just don't see that happening. I guess it's still fresh. So I think it's we're still trying to wrap our minds around that happening, because inside the NBA is in his last year of his deal, and it'll be ending in 2025. So I'm just expecting somebody, Amazon, somebody to pick up those guys, or give Ernie Johnson the Godfather offer that he can't refuse, and make him leave Turner Sports after like 40-something years of being at that station, or 30-something years of being at that station. And the other thing about that too is, just to pivot away from inside the NBA, is the Supermax contracts will reach about $95 billion annually. And after reading that, it made me really pivot from doing the show that I was originally going to do today or tonight. Think about it. Imagine a player averaging that kind of money. $95 million a year. Like, put it this way. Lotto Max in Canada, the highest jackpot is about $70 million. And you got to buy that on the strength that, like, the rabbit foot that you're holding while you're buying the ticket is going to give you good karma. And even with that said, you might have a 0.1% chance of winning it during your lifetime. And these guys will be earning possibly anywhere from $20 to $25 million more than that every year. Think about the solid role player. Forget the superstars. Think about the solid role player in the NBA that's maybe averaging about 16, 17 points a game. He's going to be earning half of that or slightly less, which that could still be anywhere from $45 to $49 million a year. Like, that's incredibly wild. Like, a role player who might be the fifth or sixth best player on his own team can afford to buy his own island. Like, I'm all for the players getting their bread, too. So, because you always have to ask, like, if the owners can pay that, as well as the salary of 14 other players, what in God's name are they making? Nobody ever wants to discuss that. And for me, like, I don't want any player to leave a penny on the table. You know what I mean? As well as the college players, because as you know, the rules have changed now where NCAA players can make money off their name, image, and likeness, right? So, and I'll actually get to them in a second in terms of the college players. But, with all that said, players are making so much money right now. It's kind of hard to tell them what they need to hear when you're making $40 million a year right now. But how are you going to be able to coach some of these players when they're pulling in $90+ million in salary? Like, they're their own brands and mini corporations now. What can you tell somebody making that kind of bread knowing that you can't take that money back? Like, can you still coach them hard? And it's hard to say that it's all relative, because it really isn't. If you're asking a player right now, secretly in a room, if they can make $80 million in a year and they don't win a chip, are they going to feel it the same way that a Patrick Ewing or Karl Malone or Charles Barkley did when they didn't win theirs? Like, with regards to the NIL deals, the name, image, and likeness deals that some of these college players are making, some of these players are actually talking, I wouldn't even say talking back. They're like straight out lashing out at their assistant coaches, because they're getting paid so much more as a student athlete. And believe me, I'm not making this up. That's actually happening right now. Now, imagine at the next level when a player is raking in that kind of money. It's going to be worth watching in terms of a professional sports experiment in real time, because I surely don't know how that gets reined in when the money is at that magnitude. Like, I heard Paul Pierce say on his podcast with KG earlier this year that if you're making like $300 million, who gives a shit about a ring? And he's kind of got a point. I'm not going to say that competitiveness is going to be completely lost or anything like that, but it's fair to at least raise the question, and I think the balance of it will be, the immense pressure to live up to that salary, because it's going to be immense. But that pressure kind of balances out because everything has a price, and $70+ million a year will kind of neutralize that noise. But as I'm recording this podcast, and Boston is pulling away from the Pacers during Game 2 of the Eastern Conference Finals, literally big news tonight from the NCAA that they're going to be allowing schools to pay players and share revenue profits from the programs, and especially mostly from the Power 5 conferences. And they're going to have to pay back out $2.8 billion to players from the antitrust lawsuit. And listen, there will be some sort of parameters in place for all of this, because right now we're living in the wild, wild west of this NIL era, which is long overdue. And to remove the false belief that these student athletes are being properly compensated for decades, while the schools and the NCAA has generated billions of dollars off the backs of these kids and continue to. So I don't feel sorry for the NCAA at all, nor these Power 5 schools. But much like the pros, again, I got to ask, like, how important are these kids taking their classes when you're making that kind of money? If you're making about $300,000 to saving $1 million a year to attend school, are you taking business management 101 that serious? From your freshman year, when you're literally the biggest star in the college town, in some cases maybe just behind the head coach, if not bigger, which already operates from that dynamic already when they weren't getting paid. Like, what's the results going to be, from this in the next 5 to 10 years? And I'm asking these questions knowing that I don't give a shit, and I want these players to get all of their bread, but I have to think that this is going to be regulated within the next couple of years or few years, between like the transfer portals and NIL deals and everything else that is new and prosperous normal. I love the chaos, though. I make no mistake. I love the chaos from it. Let the meek inherit some of this earth now. But sports is a major business. I'm watching to see what the windfall and the after effects of all of this is going to be, and how it's going to hit. But like I said, this is a short podcast. I want to wrap this up for now. So we're definitely going to be back next week with at least 2 shows, possibly even a third one next week. There's going to be a lot of content coming this way. And for starters, I didn't want to slip this in now, but this episode is going to drop on Monday. Got to talk about Diddy. Got to talk about Diddy Bot, man. This is unfortunately some crazy stuff right now that's happening. So that's definitely going to be talked about on Monday. So look out for that episode on May the 27th. Is that the right date? Yes. So May the 27th, we're going to be talking about that. As we get closer to the conference finals, I'm definitely going to have some episodes on that next week. There might be, like I said, a third episode coming this way, which will be out Friday. Stay tuned for all of it. I appreciate your patience. I appreciate you listening to the podcast as always. Thank you as well for always listening and checking out the Ave Podcast and South Shore Ave Radio. Hit the like and subscribe buttons. Please hit those 5 stars for me. 5 stars for me, please. And also, if you're a fan of hip hop and you're a fan of what happened in the last month with this Drake and Kendrick thing, please go back and double back and check out the last episode that I had with my guest DJ Keo, breaking down the whole Drake and Kendrick beef. Because it was quite interesting to watch that in general. You're still seeing the after effects of it now, which is quite crazy. Especially with Not Like Us charting the way it's charting all across the world, even in Toronto, which is just it's wild. But definitely go back and check that episode out once again. And if you haven't tuned into the catalog yet, please do. Go over to SouthShoreAve.com. Once again, that is SouthShoreAve.com. One more time for the emphasis. That's SouthShoreAve.com for the catalog. You can go back and double back on all past episodes. I may also drop actually, no, I wouldn't say I may. I will drop a Memory Lane episode next week as well. Yeah, because, right now, especially if you're a Raptors fan, especially if you've been living in the city of Toronto, it's the 5-year anniversary of the Raptors, magical run to winning their first championship. And, during that period, I was basically chronicling the journey, chronicling that run. And there was a lot of content during that time, a lot of content that I really enjoyed. So I'm going to be sharing a few of those, not all, of course, but a few of those here and there, from that period. So, and I think this week was the 5-year anniversary of the Kawhi buzzer beater. So I'm gonna share one of those out next week as well, man, because that was a great time for the city. And I can't believe it's been 5 years. See what COVID does? COVID just, it makes everything just last longer. It feels like that happened 10 years ago, not 5, right? But no, it was an incredible time for the city, man. And just watching the Raptors actually feel like they had a chance to win was, as a basketball fan, especially living in Canada, it was probably one of the best experiences that I've ever had as a sports fan ever. It was incredible. So one of those will be shared as well. I guarantee you that. Until next time, this is Cal C. And you just tuned into the latest episode of the Ave Podcast right here on South Shore Ave Radio. All right, until next week. Peace. We out.